She introduced me to her friends as the guy paying for tonight. They all snickered and called me a good investment. I just nodded. A month later, she was back living with her parents after what I did. The moment of impact wasn't loud. It was a quiet little clinking of champagne glasses in a ridiculously overpriced restaurant. We were out for my girlfriend Ashley's birthday, a dinner she had arranged with her 3 closest friends. I knew the place was expensive, but I didn't care. The cost was a rounding error in the budget for my current project, a project she was the centerpiece of. When the waiter brought another round of champagne, one of her friends, a vapid girl named Lauren, raised her glass. "Okay, birthday girl," she chirped. "Introduce your new man properly." Ashley, who was glowing from the attention and the champagne, turned to them with a theatrical flourish. She gestured towards me with her glass. "Girls, this is Mark," she said, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. "He's the guy paying for tonight." Her friends, Lauren, Jess, and Megan, all erupted in a chorus of practiced, high-pitched giggles. Jess, who considered herself the witty one, leaned forward, her eyes twinkling with malice. "Oh, I get it," she said, looking me up and down. "He's not a boyfriend, he's a good investment." They all snickered again, clinking their glasses together. They saw me as a joke, a walking ATM whose only purpose was to fund their good time. They expected me to look embarrassed, to stammer, to maybe even blush. I didn't. I just smiled, a calm, easy smile that didn't reach my eyes. I raised my own glass. "To good investments," I said, my voice perfectly even. I took a sip of the champagne. In my head, a switch didn't just flip, an entire demolition sequence was initiated. The project had just been declared a catastrophic failure. It was time to tear it down to the foundation, salvage what I could, and build something new on the ruins. Let's be very clear, I'm not a simp. I don't pay for women. I'm a real estate developer. I don't buy houses, I buy opportunities. I look for distressed, undervalued properties with hidden potential, what the industry calls bad bones. And I figure out how to unlock their value. My entire career is about seeing the hidden weaknesses in a structure, both physical and legal, and leveraging them to my advantage. I met Ashley 6 months ago. She was working as a hostess at a restaurant where I was meeting a client. She was beautiful, charming, and lived in a building I had been trying to acquire for 3 years. The Glenwood. It was a pre-war 6-story building in the most desirable part of the city. It was a gold mine, but it had a fatal flaw. It was rent-controlled, filled with long-term tenants who were paying a fraction of the market rate. Buying the building was easy. Getting the tenants out legally so I could gut renovate it was the multi-million-dollar problem no one had been able to solve. Ashley was my way in. She was a tenant. I saw her not as a girlfriend, but as a key to unlock the entire building. My plan was simple, a 3-phase development project. Phase 1, infiltration. I started dating her. I was charming, attentive, and generous. I learned everything I could about the building, not from a developer's perspective, but from a resident's. I learned about the leaky pipes the landlord never fixed, the ancient boiler that broke down every winter, the rumors of which tenants might be willing to take a buyout. Phase 2. Acquisition. Once I had enough intel, I would approach the owner with an offer he couldn't refuse, contingent on him delivering the building vacant. I would use the maintenance issues I'd learned about as leverage. Phase 3. Liquidation. I would end the relationship with Ashley, offering her a generous buyout for her apartment, just like the other tenants. She would get enough cash to start a new life somewhere else, and I would get my empty building. It was a clean, professional transaction. My investment in her, the dinners, the gifts, the time, was simply the cost of due diligence. It was a budget line item for on-site reconnaissance. Her comment at that dinner and her friend's snickering reinforcement changed the project parameters. She hadn't just revealed herself to be shallow and disrespectful. She had revealed herself to be a hostile variable, a liability. She and her friends saw me as an investment to be exploited. It was time to show them what happens when a developer decides to foreclose on a bad asset. Update 1. The night of the dinner was the beginning of the end, and I was the only one who knew it. When the bill came, a staggering $2,000, I didn't flinch. I placed my black card on the little tray. As the waiter walked away, I looked at Ashley and her friends, who were all happily scrolling through their phones, posting pictures of the meal I had just paid for. You know, Jess, I said, my voice casual. You're right, I am a good investment. The best investments, in my experience, are the ones that provide detailed data. I smiled. They all just looked at me, confused. They thought it was a strange, clumsy attempt at a joke. The next morning, I initiated phase 1 of the new plan, hostile audit. My first move was to analyze the asset's core vulnerabilities. Ashley's primary source of power was her apartment at the Glenwood. She paid a ridiculously low rent of $800 a month for a one-bedroom that should have been $4,000. This rent-controlled status was her golden ticket, and she knew it. But rent control laws come with strict rules, and I suspected she wasn't following them. I spent a day doing some deep-dive digital forensics. I hired a private investigator, a guy I used to vet potential business partners. I gave him Ashley's name and social media handles. His job was simple: find out if she was violating her lease. While he was working, I focused on the building itself. I already knew the owner, a tired old man named Mr. Harrison, who was sick of dealing with the constant repairs and tenant complaints. I put together a new offer for the building. It was a generous, all-cash offer, well above market rate for a building with its occupancy issues. But it came with one non-negotiable condition. The building had to be delivered to me completely vacant within 90 days of the sale. This put the legal burden of removing the tenants squarely on his shoulders. It was an offer designed to make him an active participant in my plan. Simultaneously, I began financially isolating Ashley. I didn't dramatically cut her off. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I started making strategic adjustments. The credit card she was an authorized user on, I called the company and had her spending limit lowered to $500, citing fraud prevention concerns. The surprise gift stopped. When she suggested another expensive restaurant, I countered with a casual, "I'm feeling like staying in tonight." I was recalibrating the terms of her investment, slowly devaluing her returns. She noticed, of course. She became moody and complained to her friends that I was being cheap. This was exactly what I wanted. I needed her to become frustrated. Frustrated people make mistakes. The private investigator hit pay dirt in less than 48 hours. His report was a thing of beauty. Not only had Ashley been subletting her apartment on Airbnb on weekends when she stayed with me, a massive violation of her lease and city law, but her friend, Jess, the witty one, had been her primary co-conspirator. Jess had her own Airbnb account and was taking a 30% cut for managing the listings and the cleaning. They had a tidy little illegal side hustle going. The report included screenshots of the listings, glowing reviews from guests, and even a Venmo transaction history between the two of them with notes like Glenwood.dollar. This was the leverage I needed. It was the structural flaw in her foundation, and I was about to drive a wrecking ball through it. I now had two paths forward. I could give this information directly to Mr. Harrison, or I could use it for a more creative purpose. I chose creativity. I drafted a formal, anonymous complaint letter. It was written from the perspective of a concerned fellow tenant at the Glenwood. The letter detailed the illegal Airbnb operation, citing specific dates and listing numbers. It spoke of strange people coming and going at all hours, loud parties, and a general feeling of insecurity in the building. It was a work of art designed to trigger a specific and aggressive response from any landlord. I didn't send it to Mr. Harrison. Not yet. I sealed it in an envelope and placed it in my briefcase. It was my ace in the hole. First, I needed to meet with the landlord and get him on my side. Update 2. My meeting with Mr. Harrison took place a week after the disastrous birthday dinner. I met him at a coffee shop near the Glenwood. He looked exhausted. I presented him with my all-cash offer. His eyes widened when he saw the number. Then he saw the 90-day vacancy clause, and his shoulders slumped. "Getting these tenants out is impossible," he sighed. "They know their rights. It would take me years in court." "Perhaps," I said, pushing the anonymous complaint letter across the table, "but I believe you may have a tenant who is not quite as protected as she thinks she is." He read the letter, his expression shifting from wariness to cold fury. The evidence of the illegal subletting was undeniable. In our city, proving just one case of a tenant illegally subletting a rent-controlled apartment can give a landlord enough legal ammunition to start eviction proceedings that often scare other tenants into taking buyouts. "This changes things," he said, his voice low. "I believe it does," I replied. "My offer stands for 72 hours. If you accept, my legal team will assist you, pro bono, with the eviction process for this specific tenant. We handle the work, you handle the notices. Once she's gone, the others will see you're serious. They'll be much more receptive to buyout offers." He agreed on the spot. We had a deal. Mr. Harrison, the tired old landlord, was now my fully motivated partner. The very next day, a formal notice to cure or quit was delivered to Ashley's apartment. It's a legal document that gives a tenant a short period to fix a lease violation or face eviction. In this case, the violation, profiting from an illegal sublet, was incurable. It was the first legal step in throwing her out. The panicked phone call I received from her was everything I had hoped for. She was hysterical. She had no idea where the complaint had come from. She immediately blamed one of the other tenants. She begged me to help her, to call my lawyers, to do something. "This sounds serious, Ashley," I said, my voice full of fake concern. "Illegal subletting? That's a tough one. I'm not sure what I can do." "But you have to do something." She shrieked. "They're trying to evict me. Where will I go?" "I don't know," I said calmly, "but I'm sure a good investment like you will figure it out." I hung up. The next part of the plan was to dismantle her support system. Her friends were not just bystanders. They were co-conspirators in her view of me as a wallet. It was time for them to feel the consequences. Jess was the easiest target. She was an aspiring real estate agent. I had my PI do a little more digging. It turned out she was working at a major brokerage in the city, but she hadn't disclosed her side hustle managing illegal Airbnbs to her employer. That kind of activity is a major ethics violation and can get an agent's license suspended. I made another anonymous phone call, this time to the ethics hotline of her real estate firm. I laid out the whole story, explaining that one of their agents was actively participating in and profiting from illegal rental schemes. I provided the same evidence my PI had gathered. The fallout for Jess was swift. She was called into a meeting with her managing broker and immediately fired. Her career as a real estate agent was over before it had even started. With Jess out of the picture, I focused on the others. Lauren and Megan both worked in fashion, an industry built on reputation and connections. I used a third party, a PR consultant I sometimes work with, to discreetly spread a story within their professional circles. The story was simple, a cautionary tale about a group of young women who had latched onto a wealthy developer, only to have it blow up in their faces when their friend was evicted for illegal activities, and another was fired for ethics violations. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The details were specific enough that everyone in their small, gossipy industry knew exactly who the story was about. Suddenly, Ashley's friends found that their own brands were tainted by their association with her. They were seen as greedy, untrustworthy, and unprofessional. The lunch invitations dried up. The networking opportunities vanished. They had hitched their wagons to Ashley's rising star, and now they were all going down with her. They abandoned her instantly, cutting off all contact to save their own skins. In the span of 2 weeks, Ashley was facing eviction, had been cut off financially, and had been completely abandoned by her entire circle of friends. She was alone, isolated in a building where the landlord now saw her as the enemy, and where other tenants were beginning to get nervous buyout offers from Mr. Harrison's lawyers, my lawyers. Her entire world, which was built on the foundation of my money and her rent-controlled apartment, was collapsing. And she still had no idea that I was the one behind it all. Final update. It has been a month since Ashley's birthday dinner. The project is complete. The eviction process went through exactly as planned. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Ashley had no choice but to take a tiny, nuisance value buyout from Mr. Harrison and agree to vacate the apartment. She got $5,000, barely enough for a security deposit on a closet in the suburbs. The day she was moving out, I arranged to be there. Not to gloat, but to oversee the final transfer of the asset. I was there with Mr. Harrison to do a final walkthrough of the building I was about to own. As Ashley was hauling the last of her boxes to a beat-up car her dad had driven in from her hometown, she saw me. She dropped the box. Her face was a storm of confusion, fury, and finally, a horrifying, dawning realization. "You," she whispered. "This was you. All of it." I just nodded. "It was a business decision, Ashley," I said, my voice calm. "You and your friends defined the terms of our relationship. You called me an investment. I simply decided to liquidate." "You destroyed my life," she screamed, tears starting to stream down her face. "My friends won't talk to me. Jess lost her job. I have nowhere to go." "Correction," I said, taking a step closer. "You destroyed your own life with your arrogance. Jess lost her job because she was unethical. Your friends abandoned you because your stock crashed. You are not the victim here. You are the bad investment. You are a distressed asset, and you have been successfully flipped." Mr. Harrison and I completed the sale of the building that afternoon. I now own the Glenwood. My construction crews are already inside, beginning the gut renovation. The other tenants all took generous buyouts and have moved on. As for Ashley, I heard she moved back in with her parents. Her grand life in the city, funded by a man she thought she was playing, is over. Her friends are radioactive in their industries, their reputations in tatters. They learned a hard lesson in finance. When you bet against the house always wins.